Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Random Respawn, where we talk about gaming news, gaming things, and gaming stuff. I'm Josh Raptor.
I'm Calebite. I don't know how we do these intros.
Nope.
Do we still even do them this way? And I'm Graham Marshall. Hi, everybody.
When
we need to get this back down into a normal schedule of how we do intros because it's
it
way
is
and then
confusing.
another way, and I never remember.
Right. Hey Wallace, how you doing, man? Thanks
up,
for the
Wallace?
countdown.
You
Appreciate
are-
it.
Howdy, Wallace.
You win for most prepared viewer.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, you just won best
You
viewer.
ain't kidding.
So this episode, hey, how you doing, Eric and
Eric,
Dark Pit?
Pit, how's it going?
Yeah, when I can't think of how to do the intro, I just default to what we have done for 4 years prior. I just forget that it's
Has it
new.
really been 4 years since you and I decided, hey, let's just waste our time doing this crap?
I noticed, Caleb, you're angling the microphone or the camera
I'm
away
trying
in case
to.
we
I'm
have
trying
a
to.
robed
so
Just
invader.
proud of
case.
you.
Just
Pointed
in case.
directly into
It's a-
the mouth hole. It's perfect.
No, not the microphone, the camera.
The camera.
Oh,
I'm trying to
that
tilt it
too.
just in
Just out of-
case.
God, we're off to a wonderful start, everybody.
So today's
Oh.
episode, we're talking about toxicity in our city. In
Stop
our
it.
city. No.
Oh, we got a
We-
lively bunch today.
Yeah,
Gail,
all right.
Pancakes, Jack
I was
Yun.
gonna say,
What's
hi,
up,
everybody.
folks?
This is great.
How's it going?
So for those of you that have come to listen about System of a Down, that is not what we'll be talking about. We are talking about toxicity in games, what it is, what people mean by it, how it's kind of around, and is there really any good way to stop it or prevent it? But since this is Marshall's topic idea, we'll let him go and kick it off. And for those of you in the chat, let us know how the levels and audio are and everything. And if you have anything to contribute, please let us know, and we will see it and say it.
Woo. In a weird way, this kind of started off with, I think it was maybe about a week and a half ago now at some point. So Subnautica came out, and there was a recent thing that had happened that the developers let go like their audio guy for the game. Because if I remember how this happened, the forum Resetera, which is the new NeoGAF with 20% less sexual assault, they stumbled up across a couple of tweets
I just
from.
got that joke.
Yes, well done. That was such a delayed laugh. I'm so proud
That
of
took
you.
me a second. Well done.
Yes,
Well done.
But Resetera came across a couple of tweets that the audio guy made like 3 years ago or something like that, like making fun of refugees and stuff in Europe, and apparently that got their panties in a wad that caused them to start getting mad at the developers, and the developers like, oh, I'm sorry, and then they let the guy go, and which in itself doesn't, it's toxicity. You can't allow people to say horrible things like that, which is a lot for me. I notice a lot of people think of it toxicity that way, where it's like you're trying to curb people from saying bad things to try and stop the experience from being crappy. But the toxicity that I know what it is then turned into the discussion on the Steam forum for that game turned into a dumpster fire because of this.
Ooh.
And because, of course, politics makes everything worse. And so that's where that kind of this idea of toxicity, what the hell it is, and how it affects our gaming industry and our games in general, kind of came to be for me. And it was another example that I was bringing up when we were first talking about this topic was League of Legends is, notorious for how toxic that game is. And like the player base can be kind of god awful, but
That's an understatement.
that is
that
an understatement.
If you guys have an understatement counter, that is one understatement that you can add to the understatement counter.
Add one.
So basically with that game in general, I think it's not because of the audience. It's the fundamentals of the game that I think kind of cause the toxicity, I guess, of where that all stems from. It's not the people who are playing it, it's the game itself and it's everything around it that's causing everyone to get all pissed off. I mean, for instance,
Well-
it does not help that the game is free, which means literally anyone can play it. And it does not matter if you lose your account. You could just make a new one and just do all that, which, that does stem from the player. However, the game itself tends to be very 5v5. Is it 5v5? I don't even know anymore. of a MOBA, and it's very team oriented, whereby one person can literally cause the game to lose because they're not pulling their weight, which causes everyone to then get upset, and that just kind of spirals out of control. I
It
mean,
it's I would say it's a little bit more than that, just with MOBA games, and that if someone isn't pulling their weight, it's not like a quick loss. It is a long,
it is a
drawn out.
long.
It is
This
a
is like a
40
half
minute.
hour of struggle.
It's
It's not
you
fun.
like on a
Yeah, or
conveyor
an
belt
hour.
into like a fire, and it's like you can't get off, and it just keeps going slowly. And people who can only play like maybe an hour or so of
An hour and a half out of the
yeah, a
day.
night.
They've just wasted a majority of their
That
time
would
playing the
Well,
game that they
that can
I
wanted
mean,
to
they
be
get
play.
one game.
yeah, that would be the one
Yeah.
game, and they knew
And
from
it's
the
just
very beginning, and they're like, this is it, and then it just
I would
tears
question
streaming
why
down
the
their
hell they're
face.
playing League of Legends as their one game, but
Hey, I
It's a
mean,
good game. Like they're the
like-
Mo people.
I mean, granted, we play Heroes of the Storm from time to time,
We
but
do.
we don't really
MOBA
give a
light,
shit.
yeah.
I mean,
Well, I know, but that's because we don't really play that genre.
yeah,
but I
we
mean,
only
if
play
you
quick
like,
play. We don't do ranked or anything like that. When you're going
Yeah.
into ranked, oh god, then it becomes even worse. Take the toxic nature of that game, then multiply it by 100, and that's how you get
Right.
ranked.
I mean, and it just, that was one thing that I wanted to talk about, because you were saying like the player, like it's the player base, but I think player bases are more inclined to be susceptible to the toxic nature when they're more um, more cooperation is required. So in a Call of Duty, one person can literally win the game, but one person can't as easily lose the game. Whereas in an Overwatch or League of Legends or something like that, one person can just straight up lose the game by not being even average.
Yeah.
So that puts a lot more weight on the individual player. And then the length of game, or the type of game that you're playing, like with MOBAs and even with Overwatch competitive, some of those matches can take a while.
Yes.
That also tends to build up this atmosphere, or this
Frustration,
environment
I guess.
that is more susceptible to people being toxic, because they're getting frustrated and they don't know how to communicate, and they're not people that so you can't just be like, hey man, like what's going on. That is going to come across very very aggressive in an online form, and especially if you're using like type chat versus voice chat, all of that can you can't understand what someone's tone is, it's very easy to take things the wrong way. So all of that can kind of breed this toxic environment. But that's not to say that toxicity doesn't exist in the other games. I mean, one of the like ongoing jokes is the Xbox Live, all the jokes about the Xbox Live player base and how it's just like completely toxic, and so you don't play
Dude Bros,
with a
that's where
microphone.
Dude Bro came from, because
Yeah.
Xbox 360 player base and when that came out and all that, and yada yada yada.
Exactly. I think the comment that you made about League of Legends being free, I think that is an interesting point to talk about with
I actually
how
think that it doesn't matter personally.
well, it
think-
means that if someone gets like banned or suspended or something for griefing, then they can just make another account.
just make a
So
new
it's like
account.
they don't lose anything if that's their goal, is just to like be one of those people, one of those trolls. Then they don't lose anything if they
especially it then doesn't help with the free players that you have a lot of players from poorer countries and like non-English speaking
Easy
countries.
there, friend.
Easy
Just because they
there.
don't speak English doesn't mean they are insta poor.
Oh, I'm not saying
When
the
they're
one in this name, yeah,
and
racist.
don't drink.
But an example of this I actually wanted to bring up, when you add more countries into the same pool of players, because of, for instance, of it being free, that happens a lot more. But even with paying games, right now, PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds is having an issue because China is not region locked. So
Mhm.
literally the entire China player base is being mixed in with the Western player base. And it's causing apparently a lot of grief and frustration, because most, if not all of them, do not speak any English at all. And that game when you're playing in a group, which a lot of the time most people do, requires a lot of teamwork and a lot of coordination with people. So not being able to like communicate at all with someone does not help. B, it's one thing that I've been hearing about is if you are not a Chinese player and Chinese players are in the match, like they will buddy up if they're in the same group as you, and they'll kill you because you are technically like, oh, he's not going to help us at all. Let's just work together, and just kill you and outright and grief you. And it's like, why? And so there's a huge backlash right now. It's like, why you need to region lock them. Like they are killing this game because there's so many of them who are literally dragging the game down. And it's causing, I guess you could say, toxicity in the player base who are just now getting just pissed off now because of it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd say that's a form of toxicity. I didn't realize, I don't really know. I've still yet to play Battleground, so I didn't realize. I thought that was a one versus everyone kind of game. I didn't even realize that,
you can be as a part of a team.
Yeah, for those games, it's you can either play a
four.
mode. Yeah, up to 4 people in a team, that can be a thing, and that is its own mode where it's teams of 4
okay.
of
no, like
people.
I mean, it would take your team of 4 and drop it into like a regular map, so there'd be a bunch of people who like aren't on a team.
No, not in PlayerUnknown Battleground. That one specifically.
I guess I wasn't paying attention.
Split up
because I've done it. I was in a party of 3 a couple times, and I thought we were facing just everyone, just like us 3.
No, that one is specifically, that game is, it splits it up between team matches and then solo matches. So if you're in a solo by yourself playing and you do matchmaking, like it'll put you, last I checked, alone against everyone else, all 99 other players who are also alone.
And
but then
also unknown.
Also unknown, yes.
On the Battleground.
That's right. The players are unknown.
We got there, ladies and gentlemen. We got there.
So a couple of things. One, hello Dent, welcome to the party. And Stuart says Xbox Live player base isn't toxic; it's just eternally entering puberty. And I will accept that clarification. I accept. I think that's pretty active. But also to kind of shift the conversation a little bit, Wallace says that what we've talked about have so far been active contributors to toxicity in games. But what do you think about more passive aspects like bot farming in WoW, for example, which ruins the balances in trading? So anything with player-based economies or player-driven economies, how that can influence.
I guess it depends on the game. I know Warframe has a player economy. As someone who, I've been playing it so much. Actually, I have stopped cold turkey for about a month now. God forbid.
Whoa!
Because
I wanted it was possible.
I know, because I have so much other crap I have to play. It's like my backlog is getting too big. I can't. I have Monster Hunter World to play. God damn it. But you don't really run into bots in that game. I guess it just depends on what specifically the currency is. Like for something like just a normal generic currency like gold, that is end all be all. Like you're gonna run into a lot of people buying and selling that, especially with bots, because you can use it for everything. You buy gear with it, you buy supplies with it, you do whatever with it. With Warframe, it's you use platinum to get cosmetics, and that's it. Like that. So there really hasn't been any way for people to be like, this is how you get currency that way. And the only way you can get their premium currency is either you pay real money for it, which defeats the purpose of the bot, or you farm rare pieces of items, and then you can then sell those items to people for actual premium currency. So, but I guess it all depends, really. I know, Caleb, you and I are dealing with Path when we were playing Path of Exile. I don't know if you were in trade chat or global chat or at all, but there were the occasional bots that would pop up.
Nope. And see, that's something that's kind of where I wanted to head, is how games and are in some ways like inherently at least a little bit toxic. Multiplayer online games at all, and that's kind of influenced a lot of how I play certain games. And a lot of, like, you guys know and have always said for a while, like, I hate playing with people. Like, that's just I don't like the average player base. And really, Destiny was the first time where I really started to step out and play with just random people all the time, because typically I just stay. I'm so conflict averse. I just stay away from all of that. I instantly mute every single person on my team if I'm playing a shooter,
Yep.
like console shooter, Call of Duty, whatever. I just go ahead and mute everybody in the lobby. I don't want to hear. I don't want to deal with trash talk or any of that
The
mess.
mute all button is
And
the greatest invention for multiplayer
Yeah.
ever.
right.
Really.
And so like and then that partially influenced my eventual end of playing Overwatch is just I just couldn't deal with the people that were playing anymore. Like it's a great game
Yeah.
and it's really well designed and I like playing with people to get better, but I just couldn't find I didn't play often enough to be able to build a group of consistent people to play with, and it was too difficult to find teams that were all kind of on the same page and were both chill and decent. Like you could find the chill group, but you were just going to get slaughtered, and it wasn't fun because you're just getting
Yeah.
creamed. Or you could find the good group, but then they're way too hard on everybody, and like it just makes for a bad experience. And so I didn't find really a spot for me to enjoy Overwatch on a regular basis because it just, even if you don't want to say that the community was toxic, it was a little more high pressure, and the reliance on communicating with other people was a little too. I couldn't control it as much, and so I had to rely on that, and so I'd stopped playing. What about you, Josh? You play Overwatch a lot, so what can you speak to with in regards to toxicity and how they handle it in that game?
Yeah, it's the people are just super creative when it comes to just being a-holes. I mean, it just things that you wouldn't even like
That's
think
just human
about.
ingenuity, man.
Right. And so one guy was actually following a streamer and he would purposefully get into games that the streamer was, I don't know how he did it, but he would just constantly get into games that the streamer was on and only pick Symmetra and basically throw games. And the streamer said this has probably happened to about like 400 games that it's happened, something crazy. And they were
Jesus.
finally able to permaban him.
Mm-hmm.
But
I remember seeing like a headline of an article about that.
yeah, and so I mean, a lot of people like blame Blizzard for the toxic environment that Overwatch has created, but I mean, it's the players that are making it toxic, not
Yeah.
Blizzard. And so, I mean,
Right.
they've done what they can. They've made buttons to
Yeah.
try and report people. And the thing
mean-
is, if you just get mad at someone because you just lost and they were playing their heart out, but you're like they just suck. I mean, then at that same time, it's like, because there's a report button feature, who's to say that someone who is toxic isn't going to purposefully use that on someone who wasn't being toxic? So it's like it goes
Right.
both ways. And so they can
Yeah.
only take that with a grain of salt. And then at the
Yeah.
same time, if they're constantly focused on trying to get people to not worry about the game or like try and be like cooler about it and not so crazy, it's like you're wasting time on trying to make sure people act like real people and not working on
Right.
features of the game. So to me it's it always comes back down to players, and that's a $60 game that has a buy-in price.
$40 game.
Oh yeah, now it's $40.
Yeah.
Well, no, it was always $40. Remember, we got the
Yeah, it was
$60
40.
version because
Oh, we
it came
got
with
the. Oh, that's right. That was we
Remember?
definitely did not need to spend the extra $20 on that.
No.
But
I don't know why we did that.
We never do. But we always
we
do.
should never do that.
Don't do it.
So it's one of those things where it just they're trying to do their best, but I don't think you make a game and then think, how are the people who are going to play this game going to try and ruin it for everyone else? And so when that happens and people are trying to ruin luckily Blizzard doesn't have, not Blizzard, WoW for sure had this problem, but Overwatch doesn't have the issue where bots would come in and do things and then rack up points and kind of screw up everyone else. It's all cosmetics and stuff like that. But I mean, it's like, how much time do you spend? Because no matter what safeguards you try and make to try and prevent someone from doing something, a lot of times that can also backfire. So the report feature is now, it's like some guy actually got somewhat, I think he wasn't perma banned. He was, I think, temporarily banned because he got mad at like it could have been Symmetra or Widow or whatever, but he got mad at them and blamed him on their loss and constantly reported him. And so it's like, that's not what it's used for. I mean, if
Right.
this is his main character,
Yeah.
and it's like at the same time with the game like Overwatch, if someone is like, hey, I'm really good at being Widowmaker, and you don't form the team around that character, then it's going to fall apart. So if he is able to do what he's supposed to do really, really well, but no one else wants to kind of support him, why is that his fault? You know what I mean? I don't know. It gets really confusing, and
Yeah.
that's why it's
Yeah, and how do you police? And then, like, it takes so many resources to be able to monitor and effectively use a report feature. Because I mean, there's tons of games that have a report feature of some kind. I mean, like Destiny had it, and any other first-person shooter on the console I can think of have always had some way to, like, report this person for whatever, for cheating or bad behavior, or anything. There's your list of options, but I don't. Other than that being there is just like a way to make me feel better. I don't know that anything has
I've
ever
never-
even really been
No
used.
matter how many times I've reported someone, I've never felt like that actually did anything. I
It's
feel
It's
like
just
yeah.
like you're
straight
just
up a
kind of
placebo.
throwing it out there, and you're like, whatever, I did my part.
I-
It's like,
Whatever.
I've
It's
reported
like,
two
cares?
people, and it was one of those things like where the guys were like, "Oh, Blizzard changed something." So if you report me, then it's going to hurt the entire team or something like that. Was like an excuse that they were using. So a lot of people were like afraid to report them because it would like affect the whole team. I don't know, it was something crazy. I don't remember exactly that, but that was a thing, but it really wasn't. And Blizzard, they've even extended it to the point like where if they start seeing you do like really jerky things to post on YouTube and get views, they'll ban you. And so it's like it's so they're actually even reaching
Then
outside
that
of the
gets
game.
weird. That just gets into weird, murky waters, and like I don't know.
But
For me,
honestly, like, how else do you do it?
Right.
But the thing, like you can't. Like at the end of the day, like there's only so much you can do. Like you have
Well,
all the
and that's-
tools necessary to be able to report people and all that stuff. But like at the end of the day, if an asshole's gonna act like an asshole, like that's it. Like I mean, shit. I mean, this reminds me again back with League of Legends a while, maybe a couple of years back now, where they kind of got into some legal issues because League of Legends, the developers were then sending out to multiple emails to accounts to basically give out a psychological evaluation. And for those who do not realize, for a psychological evaluation, questions like, what happens? How do you feel when this happens? Stuff like that. Which, if for those who do not realize, a psychological evaluation is required. If you are a minor, you cannot take one unless you have the what is it, the your guardian
Signature
sign
or
off on. Yeah.
parental
And
figure or guardian.
so it's like, a lot of League of Legends players are underage kids who are getting psychological evaluations. It's like, you can't do that, guys. That's against the law. Super hard. And I don't know. Then that just turns into trying to condition people to think and behave a certain way, which is like, oh, that's muddy waters. I don't like that. No.
Yeah, well, so Wallace says my experience is that it's mostly teen kids raging and reporting others to make and makes gameplay a bad experience. Which there definitely is a fair bit of younger players who get angry and rage and
just scream at the mic.
and just scream.
That level.
How long has it been since we've heard that?
But I mean,
I've heard it.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
But there's so many. Oh yeah, Rocket League. That was the one.
Yeah.
But because I had everybody instantly muted, I didn't hear it.
Marshall and I just instantly lost it. We were like, "What's going?" And
we're like, "What is?"
You guys are like freaking out. I'm like, I don't hear anything
Yeah.
because other people don't exist in my world. They're all muted.
Very true.
But there's a fair number of, or probably an equal number of adults that are even more vicious and toxic than kids. I mean,
oh, you get a couple drunk people on like a Friday night, like it'll.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, like squeakers are easy to. I'll use that term. That's an easy one to throw. Oh,
It's a good term, by the way.
It's an easy one to just be like, damn squeakers, But there's tons of kids with high-pitched voices that are not toxic and really just trying to learn, but people automatically write them off because that's that kind of profiling. And then adults can be like just savage, and it really is like the environment that you're in. Like, are you forced to rely on this other person? If so, you're more likely to really care about what they're doing and be more critical about what they're doing. Like, and how easy is it for you to communicate with them? And just as a function of being online games and having the anonymity of the internet, like people tend to be little more assholey than they would if it was face to face.
Yes.
I mean, that's just a
how
part
that
of it. So
happens.
so we've talked about a couple of ways that you definitely shouldn't go about trying to combat toxicity in your game, like by sending underage your underage player base a psychological survey.
Imagine
and
how many
Josh-
serial killers they could have caught. Before.
right, right.
I don't see any downside to that.
And we've talked a little bit about the general report feature, which actually Stuart made a comment on that. He said, I don't know for sure, but pretty sure that report buttons just feed into a statistical model, and anything that shows up over 2 standard deviations from the norm then gets flagged for a manual review.
See, yeah, that
which
sounds about right.
makes sense.
Makes a lot of sense.
Also means that it takes a lot of reporting for somebody to show up.
Very much so.
So again, something designed to keep the majority of the player base safe, and only people who are really, really, really bad and get reported a whole heck of a lot of times get shown up. And then even then, nothing is immediately done. It's a flag for a manual review, and then maybe something happens down the line later. So that's a general way that it's handled. And Josh started talking about a little bit what Blizzard has been doing with Overwatch. So I want to dig into that a little bit more, because I'm not really familiar with it since I don't play anymore, and I'm curious to know what they've been doing, because I've heard things about the Blizzard ban hammer coming down, and I know they did things with WoW too. I don't know if you remember anything, Marshall.
I personally don't.
It's been years since I played it. So
I've never played WoW, but I mean, I just pulled this up real quickly. Basically, it took them 15 months to implement a report feature on consoles, and people were really mad that it took so long. But then you're like, you know what I mean? It's one of those things like where like, well, they did it. It's like if they could have done it sooner, they would have tried. So, anyways, they had 480,000 PC players. They were hit with disciplinary actions, and 340,000 of that was directly from player reporting. So it's actually working.
Wow.
But
I have a question.
Yeah.
Sorry to interject. Do you have any data on like what they were reported for? That's what I'd like to know.
Oh,
I love to get into the like meaty.
Right. So
details and
there's
stuff
actually
like
a
that.
list of things that you can choose. So like, I mean, when you say report, it actually gives you a bunch of options. I don't have it on this article. I like how you didn't want to say statistics. The data.
Yeah. God, I can't talk. Okay. No joke. When I try and speak with my headphones on, it's a little hard for me. No joke. I
The
apologize.
headphones on make it hard to talk. Are they directly on your jawbone?
One Nation Underdog.
So
Okay.
They're restricting the blood flow.
And so Jeff is like Jeff Kaplan is pretty vocal about a lot of these things, and he's always doing the developer updates and stuff like that. But one player said that he was unjustly suspended for a week on the forum. So Jeff jumped in and said, "Your account had occurred 2,247 reports, and it was one of the worst offending accounts we've ever seen." And then
Pretty
it
good.
shut the guy up hardcore. But the thing is, he was suspended for a week. And so with someone with literally over 2,000 reports from other people, is that like...
Why did it take that long?
Well, not even that. I mean, it did take...
at the first 500, maybe an eyebrow should have been raised.
So
at 1,000, 2 eyebrows.
Right.
2,000? What are you doing?
But then that like goes into the territory of like, there's like a fine line between like being super duper emotional about a match and just kind of like freaking out on everyone at the very end of it versus like just being a jerk throughout the whole time. So it's like, it's kind of like the conveyor belt into the fire. If at that point where you realize that there's no hope and then you kind of lose it, I can almost forgive that person as opposed to the person starting the match and just completely throwing it. So it's like...
Oh no, I'm totally been that guy where it's just like I get so fucking frustrated, man.
Right.
It's just like, but it's like afterwards I'm like, all right, whatever, I'm done.
So right, and so it's so he had 2,247 reports, which is an insane amount.
That's a lot.
It's an insane amount. But then, I'm not even going to say half, but I mean, there's a good chance that a good portion of those were where he didn't do anything wrong, but people were just like, oh, this will be funny if I just report random people. And that's a very real thing. And so...
Oh, yeah, it's true.
Yeah. But yeah,
yeah, and that was even like... because the report feature was on PC from the beginning, and wasn't it?
Yeah, I think it was. And
I think it was.
And because I remember like being in competitive matches, like if you were solo queuing in competitive or even in quick play sometimes, but for sure in competitive, people will be like, "Oh, this dude's not pulling his weight," and they do it in all chat, like, "Oh, this guy's being an asshole." Like, report
Oh
it.
yeah.
Everybody in the opposite team report him. Like, trying to get other people who don't even know what's going on, like, to just report some guy because you say that he's being an asshole, and it's like,
Yeah, it's
so
very rare that I would ever do anything like that. I mean,
oh yeah, for sure.
For
But
Honor example, that's been an issue right now is people are AFK farming, and they do that by
Yeah.
just going to a wall and then just constantly hitting the heavy button or just holding it the heavy swing down. So that way, it's like they're constantly doing something so they don't get kicked. And the reason they're doing that is so that way they're just farming experience and then currency. And it's like
Right.
and it's a 4-on-4 game most of the time, depending on the mode. So it's like if you have a quarter of your team not doing anything, it's like you're kind of screwed. So that has been a big issue. And that's the only time where I go, hey, everyone, can you please report this guy? Because he's totally AFK farming. You know.
Yeah, and
yeah,
then you've got.
I mean,
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna
No,
say anything.
no. Oh, yeah. So it's like it. Let's see. I bet the more people you report, the less weight your report has.
Oh, I
Yeah,
would
that
agree.
might.
I can imagine that too.
Yeah.
That would. Yeah, I would imagine that's that's a factor in it as well. But it still takes. It takes a lot of time whenever you've got that that manual review. I mean, how long does it take to sift through the data around this one person's account to then determine the kind of action? Like, all of that is incredibly time consuming and difficult for companies to pull off. And so some of the more creative ways that people can that they can combat toxicity. I like what Josh was saying about Overwatch, where they're actually starting to monitor, like, just if they see something on YouTube and then investigating from there and doing, they're doing full bans or just suspensions based on what they've found on YouTube.
It kind of depends, but they are reaching out more than just the game. But then there's so many factors. I mean, just because, especially if it was on console, there's a chance that someone else in my household is playing on my account. You know what I mean? There's really no downside. I mean,
Right.
unless they're playing competitive, there's no downside. I mean, basically they're just gaining you skins. Who cares if they lose in quick play? So then
Right.
you've got that to factor in, and then there's just so many things that like need to be factored when reporting someone. And then it's like, I think they were saying that the one guy that I said that was actually like super banned because he would purposely follow the streamer, he had like 6 or 7 accounts and said that he would just keep switching accounts. And it's like, that's a lot of money. But some
Yeah.
people just don't care. Sometimes being a jerk face is more important than money. And
Right.
so you know, you can be as creative as you want and perma ban, but you can't like straight up ban an IP address because a lot of people have shared IP addresses because it's cheaper for telecom companies to do that. So it's like you just can't ban an IP because there's a chance that you will ban thousands of people. And
Right.
there's a chance
Yeah.
that your account got hacked. I mean, there's just so many things, and the report feature can only do so much. But if you see somebody being like, "Oh, we're gonna just be a jerk and then post it on YouTube," I was like, "Oh, you know, there's literal proof that you are just straight up being a jerk." Kind of like, I feel like it's like, I call that the Logan Paul. If you are
Logan Paul.
if you are Logan Pauling, um, then then you're
That's
just being a
funny.
jerk for
You
views.
just made me upset now.
And right, and it just makes everyone sad.
on.
It's going.
Can't do this anymore.
So yeah, and it's like, it sucks that people blame Blizzard for the toxic environment, but they just made a game. You know what I mean? They didn't
It's
make
really the people.
right.
Yeah.
And so, and you're right. It's a competitive game. There is that air of competitiveness, and people want to win, but then there are the people who don't care about winning. And then that can make a team of 5 really upset. So it just grows. You have one bad person that's a total jerk, and then you completely basically throw 5 people off balance, and then you lose, and then everyone starts getting mad at each other, and they're like, "But I've got gold medals," and they shout it at the screen, and I assume that their fist is like shaking as they say it, and you're like, well, if we're not killing anything, it doesn't matter. We've lost the match. No matter how many gold medals you have, maybe you shouldn't have been Symmetra the whole time. And so, you know, you've got things like that, and it's just like, there's just so many to it, and I can't really get mad at Blizzard. And they've tried, you know, they've made the competitive season to try and get rid of people who just, like, you know, there's actually like, you can lose points. You know, there is a loss of value of some sort when you don't win as a team. And they've switched it up. So like before, way back when, about a month ago.
Hold on.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
Sorry to interject. Bat Lover, hi. Also, if you don't know who Logan Paul is, maybe do a search on him on Google to
No,
see.
don't. It's not worth
He
it.
doesn't need the search or the
No.
trend or anything like that.
Logan Paul was
Don't use Google then, because you know it's all owned
It's
by
like,
YouTube.
I hate being that
Just
guy who brings up someone awful, and
That
then
you-
more
yeah.
people find out about him. That was not the point.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Never
No,
mind.
he was an asshole. and
Don't
made
look him up.
made
But
profit off of just being an asshole.
yeah,
That's
he's
Right.
yeah,
all I
he's
mean.
just that kind of guy. Yeah.
But yeah,
All right.
so they opened the competitive, so it's like you can lose points and things like that, and you'd think that it would combat it, but they've since, so like let's say if you're a Winston mate, if you're that's all you played was Winston. With the old system, you were better off always picking Winston, insta picking it, and then jumping into the middle of every single person and trying to kill like one person. As a team, you would be hurting everyone. But for yourself, you'd be basically building up Winston stats. And so let's say you lost 70% of the time. Those 30% of the time when your team won because they basically had to like be way better than the other team and carry you, you would actually gain a lot more points on a victory because it looked like your Winston play was significantly better than all of the other Winstons playing. And so,
Right, I remember that. It was based on like what the character, and so like if you're playing a support character who's not supposed to be getting a lot of kills, but then you're doing better than the average player of that character. Yeah, I
Right.
remember how that
And
stuff.
so if
yeah.
you're a
Weird.
So they
tank
changed that?
and you've got the most damage, you're not guarding your team. You know what I mean? It's like one of those things. And
Right.
so at diamond and above, I think actually is it diamond and above? I think it's diamond and above. They made it so that way that doesn't matter anymore. Only wins matter, which how it should be for the entire spectrum. So that way it's not
Yeah.
like I need to get my gold, I need to one trick all the way up to platinum.
Yeah, I
It's-
never understood that whole gold, silver,
Right.
bronze.
And
Like that
that's-
doesn't really mean a whole lot in terms of
Doesn't mean anything.
how you're doing compared to other people. It's like I got gold for most damage. Yeah, but like so, I mean,
Right, yeah,
who
exactly. And
cares?
so
Are you killing them? I mean, if not, then like at the end of the day, it doesn't matter how many times you've hit him and done so much damage. If you're not actually hitting and then killing your opponent, then it's like who cares?
right.
Big
So
deal.
at lower ranks, I feel like it's, and actually there are people who play at Grandmaster and they say it is just as toxic as it is at lower. You'd be surprised at just how people
For
are.
sure.
You
There
think
are
that
always
once you
gonna be
hit
those people
platinum,
who think they are hot shit. I mean, that's just going to
right?
happen.
And so
I mean, again, just people. I think that
yeah.
just like our natural state of like just as a whole, like there are good individuals all over, but it's like mob mentality. When you get a group of people together, like they're just going to be assholes.
Yeah.
It's like it's just too easy.
We devolved to our id and ego where we either try to consume or destroy it. It's what happens.
It's too easy to be negative or to be that kind of way, to be mean to somebody, I guess. But that was one of the interesting things about Destiny 1 specifically, because I spent a lot more time doing raids and everything in Destiny 1. That was the interesting thing to me about that community, and it was in some part, I guess, the method that I used to find people to play with, because that game, it wasn't, if you wanted to do raids with people, it wasn't match made. You had to go out and create your party separately before you could go into the 6-man raid. And but that I would usually find my groups on like a subreddit called our fire teams, and so that would be where people would post and look for groups and whatever. But then there were other methods of LFG or looking for group sites that came up that were a little easier, quicker to match people up with. And I found that on average it still was fine. Like overall it still was fine either way, no matter which site you used. But it did seem to me that like the method of posting or finding a group that was a little harder or a little took longer, like going through Reddit where it's updating threads and it's posts and comments and delays and like all this stuff, versus the instantaneous LFG, like you were more often going to find a better, more quality match with a group on the subreddit than the LFG sites. And is that because it takes more time, so you're more committed to it, and are less prone to like be upset with people that you're matching up with? I don't know. Is it because the community in the subreddit was smaller than that on the LFG sites because they're open to more audiences? Like, I don't know. But it's an interesting thing to think about. Like, is it that accessibility that opens things up to being more toxic? And I'm not saying that the Destiny LFG sites were toxic. Just saying that if I had a bad experience, it was usually from one of those groups versus one that I found on a subreddit. So, do you guys have any experience with anything like that?
It's no, really the only time I really ever used Reddit for a game was Animal Crossing New Leaf, and that was to find out when Joan was selling turnips for a low price. And so that was always that's something that I think like Nintendo gets pretty harped on about having really kind of terrible multiplayer aspects of games that do seem dated, and it's absolutely true. I mean, to get in order to be able to play with somebody, you need like a 16-digit friend code, and you need to do something else, and it's really hard to like just jump into a game and play online. But if you are playing in a group, it's almost because it's like you had to try really hard to get that group, and it's almost like a nicer experience. But then it's, am I going to spend 15 to 20 minutes trying to get a group together, or am I just going to like play something else and
play the video game?
Exactly. And so that's also another thing is like they kind of really messed up with Splatoon, but I think in the original and I don't know if they've patched this or not, but you couldn't play online, I think, unless like you had a full group of 4 or you didn't have a group. You did a single. So it was something like that. So it's like, how many minutes are you going to spend waiting to get that fourth person on?
The fourth person.
Right, just to play a couple matches of Splatoon. Like Destiny, it's a little bit different. I mean, raids take a long time. And
raids take longer, yeah.
And so it's like, that you're dedicating hours to this. Whereas Splatoon, you're like, a couple quick matches and it'll be great. But like, let's spend 30 minutes trying to find people, and then I have 15 minutes left to actually play a match. And so that's kind of really frustrating, a little bit annoying. But it's like, so I was reading, so League has basically, they have something that they have an Insta feedback system where the company noted that homophobia, racism, sexism, death threats, and excessive verbal abuse are both overwhelmingly rejected by the community and hard to mistake, which is true. So they use an algorithm to basically punish players who've been reported for bad behavior within 15 minutes of a game ending. And that's really neat. But then, it's kind of like what Marshall said, how easy is it to make a new account? I mean, I remember the Gmail days when you had to be invited for it. Whereas now it's like, I mean, honestly, there are sites that I make temporary fake email addresses just to register for something, but I never ever want to get their spam email. So it's like, I mean, there are ways to just make a fake email account, have it active for 10 minutes, but that's all you need in order to create a totally new account and then just wreak havoc on people.
Oh, now it requires your phone number. Oh, now it requires your social security number.
Right. Oh, yeah. Now they're asking for a ton of stuff. That's true.
Yeah. Yeah, we also need to make sure we have a camera right in your apartment or your household so we know exactly who you are and what you're doing and all that. Okay, that's just me being weird. I apologize. Caleb, speaking of Destiny, I will say, what do you think of guided games for Destiny 2? And basically from the look of it, from what I've been reading up on Reddit and all that stuff, how it kind of basically fell off the wayside and failed.
Yeah, it was. I thought. I mean, it was part of one of my my videos talking about like clans and the things that were going to be a part of Destiny 2 right before the launch, and it really sounded like, and in concept, it was a really good idea, but implementing something like that works and that isn't abused is really hard to do. And the way that they paired people up with matchmaking, I mean, the queuing took forever, and and then you can't ensure that just because someone is in a clan or whatever. No, so the point of, for those who don't know, the point of guided games was that because raids are this a bigger endeavor, they're not a huge endeavor like in WoW or something, but they are for this game, that for a first-person shooter, they are a much bigger, more involved experience that is very mechanic heavy. And you have to know what's going on and be able to work with other people to get through
talk with other people. Yes,
and it requires a group of 6 to. You don't have to have a group of 6 to go in, but you have to have a group of 6 to beat it. Like, unless you're just godly with your couple of friends that can, been playing the game forever. but typically you need all 6 people to go in and do this encounter, and there's no matchmaking provided for the game, so you have to, like I said before, use other websites or whatever to find people to play with. And so they were like, well, guided games, okay, so we're bumping up the clan features in Destiny 2, where we have more in-game clan functionality, where you can see your clan's roster in the game and join on people much more easily and things like that. So we want to open it up to people who don't have a clan or a friend base and want to be able to do these raids. So you can sign up to be I forget the terms that they used for it, but you could be a seeker. I think it was a seeker.
Like an ambassador, kind of something
If
like that.
it
I
was
don't
a
know.
seeker or a guide, I think were the
Yeah.
two. So like clans, the idea would be a clan would have 4 or 5 people that wanted to do a raid but needed a 6th, and then so they would post their group on the guided games and be like, it basically would be an LFG but within using game resources. But the problem with that is the way that it matched people up, it would take hours. Some people talked about how it took hours to find a connection with somebody as a seeker and as a guide. So something about how they were trying to pair people up didn't work. And then even after waiting so long to get connected, there were times when a seeker who had maybe run through the raid once, or half of it, knew more than their guide counterparts who were in it. And there was like 4 or 5 people who'd never done it before, but they were like, oh yeah, like take us through. And so there was no way to ensure that the people who were
There wasn't
posting
a
as
test that
guide.
they could take. Like there wasn't like a small questionnaire, and it's like you have
Yeah,
to
I mean,
pass to
and
be a
even
guide.
There were also
What?
the issues of people getting into guided games who weren't even using any type of voice at all.
Yeah,
They weren't
not
communicating at
guides.
no
all.
mic.
Like, what?
Follow my
What are you
character.
doing here? Oh,
Yeah.
it's so bad.
So it was very difficult for them to monitor and police that system to make sure that it was a good experience. And so that was kind of the interesting thing, is like Destiny 1 raids were great, and it was definitely something that a portion of the player base never got to experience because it was too much work to put a group together, if you didn't have friends that played. But it was very positive. I don't remember, like, there were very few complaints that I remember hearing about or reading about, with how that played out. But with guided games, you try to make it easier for people to get together, and it just starts going to hell. It starts it's hard to control what people are going to do. So when you open up the game to that kind of vulnerability, like, it's probably going to get taken advantage of in some way.
Yep. And then you realize there's a reason why only like a percentage of the player base has gotten to end game content, like World of Warcraft, like all those crazy end game raids and all that stuff that I used to play with my guild. Like less than 5% of the entire World of Warcraft community ever stepped foot inside a raid, like Molten Core, Blackwing Lair, all those raids, even the older ones way back in the day. Like no one, like very few actually got together as a guild to do this. And I'm not talking about like Destiny where it's 6 people doing a raid. I'm talking about back in the day, 40 people getting together to do a raid for like 4 or 5 hours. Like that was man, those are the good old days. But
Right.
it's just, one thing though, but before I forget, it's another issue with toxicity, I think, comes specifically from cheating, like full-blown cheating, like you are using hacks. One thing that Steam has tried to do with Counter-Strike, whatever Global Assault, I think it's whatever that version's called, where you can pay to be put into the legit ranked league. And I mean, literally, you pay money to Steam, so you are put into these this specific ranked league of
Like premium
and
queue.
all the legit players go into it and all that stuff, because either that or you go into the normal matchmaking that is usually full of cheaters and all that stuff. And the point of you paying is so that way the anti-cheat systems and all that stuff in that game pick up all the people who try and get in, pay money, and try and put in cheats and all that stuff. However, that only works in theory because the cheaters still end up in those ranked matchmakings. that people are straight up paying to get into that have dropped money so that way they don't have to deal with it. But that still happens. And worst of all, it's like I've heard that it's like most of the time if people are reported for cheating, like nothing actually happens, and it's
because they
bad.
paid for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
It's
bad.
weird when that's involved. It's kind of like it's weird because a lot of times if there's some toxicity in games, it creates a snowball effect where people get pretty toxic about how toxic the games are, and then
Yeah,
For Honor.
exactly.
oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so I mean,
Ooh.
even Destiny, I feel like experienced this, where it's just, I mean,
Yeah.
Well,
they
Destiny
just
2 right now,
yeah,
totally. Like there's so much anger and frustration with that game
and
because there's so much fundamentally wrong with it right now.
right, and then people are blaming Blizzard. I mean, it's just gotten really, really bad. They're like, oh, they're just not doing enough. They're a billion-dollar industry, and they can't even, it had to get to 2,000 incidents before they banned somebody, and it's like, there. It's weird that because there were some toxic players, that non-toxic people got toxic in like forums and things like that to complain
Right.
about how bad the game is, but now they are anti the
Groupthink.
game, right? And so it's such a weird thing.
Which goes back to my previous argument of toxicity isn't necessarily like the interaction of the players and what they're saying to try and developers trying to curb that language. The toxicity comes from the fundamental issues of the game itself that then spread to the player base who are getting angry, frustrated, annoyed with it, who then spread their own toxicity because of that toxicity to begin with.
Right.
Yeah, it's more than just games too. I mean, like Twitch. I wanted to touch on this just a little bit. Marshall and I were talking about it before the
Yes.
show. Twitch is trying to do something about the toxicity of their community, and so they're changing up some of their computer. Well, everyone, Twitch is like Twitch chat is like a horrible place.
It is.
But I mean, like, who got so butt flustered about freaking Twitch chat? I mean, my God.
I mean, I think it's just the community trying to make themselves better and trying to or the company rather. I think it's just Twitch like trying to deal with some of this to make their user experience better, which is what they should be doing. I mean, I don't think that there's anything wrong with that.
Yeah, it
And
just goes
so
into then the
trying to-
territory of sorry, continue. I keep
Well, as
cutting
they
you off,
get
I
bigger
apologize.
and there's more and more people that are there, I mean, there's millions of
It
viewers
It
on
has a lot to
Twitch.
do
Like
with advertisers too. It's kind of like the YouTube
Right,
ad pod.
yeah.
A lot of it has to do with
Oh, yeah.
advertisers.
Exactly. So like what are advertisers willing to pay for? And so it that all is part of it. But Twitch, I know I think there's been a couple of cases where they're starting to use outside methods to determine like
Oh yeah,
toxicity
no, it's
and
actually in their
account
new
bans
guidelines.
and
They say that
Yeah,
if,
that
Yeah,
is straight up
like-
in the guidelines. Like they will be checking your, Twitter accounts and all
like
that stuff. It's
Twitter
like,
and yeah.
but like, and then again, then I worry about vagueness and like, what are you looking for that you have to go? Okay, you can't do that. We have to ban you. And that's
Right.
not even.
But how else
Twitch
do you
chat?
I mean,
that is straight up the streamers themselves that's kind of angled towards. Like, I highly
Right.
doubt that they're paying an entire army of people to look through every account's social media, which there's no way to be able to check for that. So they're definitely looking at the streamers for that. So it's like, so it's the streamers' fault that chat is bad. I don't.
no, I don't. I mean, there are some streamers that I feel like kind
Oh,
of
of course.
not encourage it, but it's definitely like, oh, this guy definitely is, he's swearing at everyone, and then so everyone in chat is swearing at everyone else. That's a terrible example, but
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like
I get that, but it's like at the same time, like that
Like,
would be like
never once have I
Lyric, who's one of the
felt like
yeah,
going on a-
never have I run into like a streamer who's like actively trying to make other streamers' lives hell.
Well, actually, I
Like-
mean, there are streamers who are like, who actually no, actually, this is totally legit. Where they're streaming live and they're just saying, "I hope you die," and like shouting at other players that they're playing with, and actually have death threats. And then you've got some people that are like, then they'll go and taunt the person that they were yelling at. I mean, there's YouTube drama, there's Twitch drama, all the time.
That drama, YouTube drama
Absolutely.
specifically, is how much of it is just completely like superficial, like they're just ribbing each other and they don't
it's
really
people.
care, and it's just all in good fun.
Oh,
But the thing is, at the end of the day, that's not their fault if some dude who watches them like takes it
no, I
really,
agree.
really far.
I can't imagine Twitch blaming because it's the people playing the games that are bringing the audience, and so I can't imagine that
Yeah.
Twitch would be like, we got to get rid of this dude because his chat, like this jerk in his chat always comes up. But it's
Logan
like
Paul.
it kind of gets those things like where I'm all for say whatever you want. I've left up the Batman Arkham Origins video with all of its amazing comments because it's like that's me. I feel like if you feel like
Just
doing
leave
that,
it
go
up.
ahead.
Like, who cares?
But there, I can see where it's like some people it would be very hurtful for them. People who care about things. I'm not one of those. But
Deep feelings and such.
right. So I'm going to bring this up that Stuart said pretty quickly. He said cheat detection is a hard problem for the same reason as Devil May Cry. As soon as your code is running on someone else's machine, you no longer have control over it. But then we later learned that it's not Devil May Cry, it's the DRM that he meant.
Damn.
So he's absolutely right. I mean, you can... it's in Steam, it has dedicated servers to run Counter-Strike. But it's like, you can't monitor every single player playing on every single server all over the world. I mean, it's the first or second highest grossing esport in the world. It's like the audience is huge.
StarCraft, yeah, it's huge. Yeah.
And there's like StarCraft. Actually, I think League of Legends maybe a little bit bigger. And then
StarCraft right now, yes. League, I think, is better. Actually, I don't know the stat wise between League and Dota in terms of popularity, but
so
that's a different discussion.
is before we wrap, is there any quick way to get this? Or what if there was like what happens if you did have to put in your social security number when you got a game?
Yeah, I'm not playing that game.
Well, I'm not. So I'm not. So it doesn't have to be your social security number, but it's
No.
like you're born. They give you your social security number, and they give you your game number, and you have to
Your game
always
ID.
enter. Yeah, it's kind of like a.
They have that in China. It's a little shady.
Well, not even that, but it's like basically. I mean, you could essentially. I mean, I guess if you found like their credit card and trace back the payment or whatever like that. But what if there was one unique number that everyone had, and that way if you were a total jerk on the game, they're like, oh, well, we know your unique number, you can't play this game anymore, and they ban that number. And it's like,
I mean,
You just buy it
but
again.
then but it all comes back to the verification though. Like with social security numbers, there's ways for your identity to be stolen.
every
There
tax
would be
season.
ways for your your game identity to be
There's the
stolen. And I
DDoS
think that there's-
problem in Destiny 2, where in trials, if people literally
Right.
DDoS
that's
you
right.
mid-match, yeah,
Yeah.
like the age of being able to screw with someone is totally a real thing right now. I mean,
Right. So but I think you're on the right track with it. Like it kind of comes down to like the decision from the company. Do you want to try to work to curb the toxicity, or do you just do nothing?
oh, interesting.
And if you're going to curb it, then you have to pose restrictions like what Twitch is doing, or looking in other ways, or trying to implement other ways to verify like that people are doing the behavior that you deem unacceptable, or do you just let it run rampant and then it eventually either like consumes itself, or the people stop having fun with it and it goes away? What do you do? And so, because there isn't a clear answer and there isn't a clear solution to combating toxicity, so it kind of comes down to
I think
that kind of a philosophy.
I think of it like Twitch plays Pokemon, which is 4 years old to this day. I think it was completed on this day and it was, oh my god, that was an amazing time. But basically, despite having a lot of people try and mess up the game, overall, after a long enough time, basically good won. Good beat out evil. So I feel like that's the case if you didn't police anything. But then does the community drop so low that you never have that chance to rebound, which is a very real thing.
Right.
But also policing people, it's kind of like people are like, oh, freedom of speech. You're right. You can say anything you want.
slippery slope. Yes.
But you have to face the consequences for shouting fire in a movie theater. You know what I mean? It's
well, that's illegal. Last I checked. I mean,
oh no, it is. But that's what I'm saying. It's like,
that's inciting panic and all that goes on under different laws and all that stuff.
right.
Yeah,
No, it's absolutely. It's it's one of those things like where it's like, yeah, you can say anything you want to, and you're lucky enough to be totally anonymous because of the internet. But if you're saying something and then you get caught for it, and they know that it's you who said it, it's like you've got to face the consequences. Just because you can say something doesn't mean you should say something. And so it's there's a line. Do you just completely get rid of chatting altogether? I mean, that's a way to do it. But then how do you tell a team-based game what to do? You can. It's weird.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
teabag them to let them know they're not doing good. And then they ban teabagging. And then that just goes down that road until you basically have no way of communicating with other people and yada, yada, yada.
Stuart makes a good point. Either your policy is free speech or there is ambiguity in what is allowed and what's disallowed. And then see Twitter moderation. And he's absolutely right.
Twitter moderation's weird.
Nobody
man,
knows
'cause
how or why anything happens in it, and why some people get in trouble for things and other people don't. Actually,
ambiguity is bad. Everyone, just don't be ambiguous. Just lay it out what you like and what you don't like, and that way people will be like, okay, this is something I don't like, and then they'll leave. And many other people will be like, all right, this is something I do like. But because they're ambiguous about it, it's like it's ambiguity.
I think that if you have a set of rules, they need to be very clearly laid out. And if you cross those rules, that's so okay. So this is a quick example.
They have to be enforced for everybody.
Every single person.
No favorites. Stop that.
When we did the predatory game design last week, we were actually flagged, and our monetization was decreased for that video because we had the word predatory in it. No one on YouTube listened to anything. It was insta, hey, we're going to half the monetization because of whatever. So I requested a manual review. Us being a much smaller channel, they couldn't guarantee that they would review it unless the video got 1,000 views within a week. Only Corey's videos get 1,000 views in a week. So there was no chance that they were going to review it, which just hurts us as smaller streamers. Like if we were guaranteed 1,000 views every week, who cares? We missed one, but we are not. So that was super annoying. But if these guidelines were absolutely clear and written in stone for everyone to see, and it was followed for every single one, I think that you can't complain. Like the guy saying, "Oh, I don't know why I was illegally banned." Well, you've got 2,000 things against you. It's like that is a concrete example of what you can't do, and maybe they just need to have a completely no tolerance. If you say any of these things, we will insta ban you. And I mean, would that be too?
Yeah,
I mean, if you shouted something,
it's accountability.
I
mean, it's all comes back to your comment about the having a gamer ID. People just need to be in some way accountable for their actions, because when you aren't, it's really easy to just be a jerk.
Yeah.
And be toxic.
And
like Wallace says, you can say all, but you shouldn't say all.
Right.
You can be a dick, but should you?
But you shouldn't.
That's a hard decision I make every day.
That's
You're damn right. It's hard.
Speaking of, it's time to watch The Bachelor.
It is. The Bachelor's on. Thank you guys for watching. Stuart, Wallace. Don't
other people tuned in to
Lots
say
of other
hi.
people.
All you
so
lurkers
many
out there,
people.
you're cool.
That was awesome. Thanks for all the activity in the chat. We will be back again Monday, same time, same network. And with that, I'm Josh Raptor.
I'm Caleb.
And I'm Graham Marshall. Thank you. Take care.
Bye, guys. Bye.